The champagne cork popped with a sound that felt like a gunshot to my chest. Across the sleek glass conference table in a Chicago high-rise, my cousins, Andrew and Logan Barrett, clinked their flutes with smug satisfaction. I sat at the far end, staring at the stack of termination papers they'd slid across like a final insult. "To the future of Barrett Dynamics," Andrew said, lifting his glass. "Finally free to reach its full potential," Logan added, smirking. "No more dead weight in IT support." He looked right at me. "That's all you ever were, Elise. Uncle David kept you around out of loyalty, but this isn't a family pet project anymore. It's business." I picked up the papers with steady hands, though inside I was a storm. 21 years of my life, erased with a few strokes of ink. "My name is Elise Barrett, and I'm 38 years old. I was just 17 when I started working at my uncle's company, back when Barrett Dynamics was a modest parts manufacturer barely scraping by with mechanical gears and switch panels. Nothing glamorous, just dependable, utilitarian components that made machines run. From the beginning, I didn't fit the mold. Andrew, 5 years older, went off to Wharton and came back acting like he'd invented capitalism. Logan, 3 years older, majored in communications and could talk a fish out of water. They were polished, loud, and always presenting someone else's work as their own. And me, I was the quiet one. I loved the production floor. I loved circuits, tools, CAD software, and spending my weekends teaching myself how to code and solder. While they hit country clubs and networking events, I was under fluorescent lights, rebuilding motorized systems by hand. "You've got the brain of a designer," Uncle David used to tell me, watching as I sketched out a prototype for a voice-activated panel system. "Maybe even a genius." But to Andrew and Logan, I was always just the girl with oil stains on her jeans and weird ideas. When I designed our first adaptive sensor grid at 23, they called it Elise's Science Fair project. When I created the voice-controlled panel that became our flagship product line, they branded it as a Barrett innovation and pushed me behind the demo screens. But here's what they never understood. Every patent application we'd ever filed, the motion-triggered relay boards, the wireless security interface, the energy-saving actuator arrays, listed me as the sole inventor. They filed under the company, sure, but under U.S. patent law, inventorship cannot be reassigned, no matter how many executives toast each other with Vive Clicquot. "Are you going to sign those or just keep glaring at them?" Andrew asked, checking his watch. "We've got a call with the Tokyo buyers in 30 minutes. Big order coming through for the smart grid line." My smart grid line. 5 years of weekends, rewrites, and micro-tests. Every single component engineered in that lab they were so eager to erase me from. "Of course," I said, calmly signing the paper. "I'll clear out this afternoon." "That won't be necessary," Logan cut in. "Security already boxed your stuff. They're in the lobby. Key card and phone, please." I rose slowly, placed the items on the table, and turned toward the elevator. "Oh, and Elise," Andrew called after me. "You remember the non-compete clause, right? No working for competitors for 3 years." I turned just enough to smile. I remember everything. What they forgot to read, buried in the original contract language from 15 years ago, was that while the company owned the products, the intellectual property rights remained mine. The moment I was removed, they lost automatic licensing. 2 weeks later, the Tokyo deal collapsed. Their lead investor pulled out, and a quiet press release announced a new startup, Leora Systems, helmed by founder and chief innovator Elise Barrett. The tagline? "The mine they couldn't contain." 5 years, just so we're clear. I turned and gave them a smile, not my usual accommodating one, but something sharper. Clear. "Andrew, Logan, enjoy your meeting with the Tokyo delegation." As I walked out of the glass building I had poured half my life into, clutching a single cardboard box of desk clutter, I pulled out my personal phone and made one call. "Harrison, it's Elise Barrett. Remember that contingency plan we talked about? It's time." Harrison Lowe, my patent attorney, and the only person outside the company who truly understood the scope of what I'd built, didn't sound surprised. "They finally pulled the trigger?" he asked, voice calm. "Just now, 2-to-1 vote. My uncle's shares split evenly between Andrew and Logan after he passed. They control the board now. And they don't know? Not a clue, I replied. They never read the filings, they never questioned the different language in some of the patents, they just assumed everything defaulted to Barrett Dynamics. Here's what my business genius cousins never bothered to understand. There are two kinds of patent assignments. The first, standard corporate practice, transfers all rights to the company on day one. The second, which I had deliberately used for the last 5 years, grants only a limited use license tied to employment, while ownership remains with the inventor, me. It was a subtle but legally profound difference, one hidden in fine print that neither Andrew nor Logan had ever bothered to read. Because, of course, technical paperwork was Elise's job. How many patents are we talking about? Harrison asked. 17, I said, sliding into my parked Prius. That includes the entire smart grid suite, plus every update to our embedded firmware and automation logic. And the full mobile ecosystem. He let out a long breath. So, Barrett Dynamics has been operating under licensing agreements that automatically expired today? Correct, I said. As of 10 minutes ago, they're infringing. How fast do you want to move? How fast can you send the cease and desist? I've had them drafted for 2 years, Harrison said without a hint of apology. I just need to add the date. Elise, are you absolutely sure this is going to get loud? I thought of all the boardroom meetings where I was cut off mid-sentence, of my cousins presenting my inventions as joint innovations while I stood at the back of the room, of the smirks, the dismissals, the box I had just been handed as my grand exit after 21 years. Send 'em, I said, every last one. The weekend was unusually quiet. I spent it in the only place that ever made sense, my garage workshop. Years ago, I converted it into a fully functional prototyping lab, complete with 3D printers, soldering benches, and a CNC mill. It smelled like sawdust, heated plastic, and freedom. My phone buzzed here and there. Former coworkers asking what happened. Friends checking in. I ignored all of them. I had work to do. Monday, 9:00 a.m. Sunshine poured into the skylight like a cosmic spotlight. Perfect timing. As Andrew and Logan settled into their leather chairs and poured their overpriced coffee, Harrison's cease and desist letters were arriving, by courier, fax, and encrypted email. I made sure they got the message 3 different ways, no loopholes. 9:07 a.m. Andrew called. I let it ring. 919, Logan, ignored. 913. Both of them from the office line. This time, I answered. Good morning, gentlemen, I said sweetly. How was Tokyo? Eliza, what have you done? Andrew's voice practically shattered the receiver. I've exercised my rights as the legal owner of 17 patents currently being infringed upon, I said coolly. Since I'm no longer an employee of Barrett Dynamics, your licenses are invalid. Effective immediately, you are to cease all manufacturing, sales, and distribution. You can't do that, Logan barked. Those belong to the company. You made them here. Actually, I said, if you go back to the contract I signed 5 years ago, you'll see I filed them under independent contractor status. At your request, remember? Because you didn't want to give me a raise. Silence. I smiled, leaning back in my chair. And now you'll pay 10 times that in court, or in licensing fees. You restructured my employment to save on benefits, I reminded him, voice even. Had me sign a new contract classifying me differently for tax reasons. That change gave me legal grounds to retain ownership of any patents I developed. Silence. I could practically hear the frantic rustling of paper, the urgent clicking of keyboards as Andrew and Logan scrambled to find the contract they never bothered to read. But you still assigned them to the company, Andrew said, voice cracking. I licensed them to the company, I corrected. There's a difference. A license is conditional, in this case tied directly to my employment, page 47 of my contract, subsection 12B. I'm guessing neither of you made it that far. This is blackmail, Logan snapped. No, I said coolly. This is business. Isn't that what you told me on Friday? That you're running a business, not a charity? I could hear them unraveling on the other end of the line. The smart grid line makes up 73% of our revenue, Andrew said, now fully in panic mode. And you just fired the one person responsible for it, I replied. Let me remind you. Barrack Dynamics used to make industrial switches and junction boxes. I turned it into a smart technology company. You fired the reason that transformation happened. We'll sue. Please do, I said, a smile in my voice. I'd love to hear you explain to a judge why you never read the contracts you signed, why you never questioned why the tech support was named the sole inventor on every major patent, or how you voted out the person who's been propping up your bottom line for over a decade. More silence. Then Andrew's voice, smaller now. What do you want? What I've always wanted, I said. Respect, recognition, and fair compensation. We can't just undo the termination, Logan muttered. The board would need to vote. We'd look like complete idiots. Then I suggest you start selling basic junction boxes again, though that may be difficult. I also hold the patents for the updated manufacturing process. I ended the call and set the phone down. On my workbench, under the glow of a warm desk lamp, sat the future, a sleek prototype, my newest invention. A modular smart home hub capable of integrating climate control, lighting, security, and appliances in real time, learning user habits, and optimizing efficiency. Smarter, faster, more secure than anything Barrack Dynamics had ever released. I had been developing it in secret for months, knowing this day would come. The calls didn't stop. Board members, attorneys, even a former engineer trying to catch up. I ignored them all. My focus was here, in the lab I built with my own hands. By Tuesday, a formal letter from Barrack Dynamics' legal team arrived, accusing me of theft of trade secrets and corporate espionage. Harrison, never one to be rattled, responded with a 17-page rebuttal. He included side-by-side breakdowns of each patent, the contractual language, and records proving they'd been developed off-site, independently, and under a contractor classification. He ended it with a line I particularly enjoyed. Any further attempt to manufacture or distribute products based on Miss Barrett's intellectual property will trigger immediate legal action. By Wednesday, the real panic began. The Tokyo distributors threatened to cancel the deal. Clients were demanding answers. Stock had dropped 30% overnight on rumors of a manufacturing freeze. By Thursday morning, Timothy was on my doorstep. He looked terrible. Wrinkled shirt, bloodshot eyes, the hollow stare of someone facing a financial freefall. "Elise, please," he said when I opened the door. I let him in. I didn't offer coffee. Petty? Maybe. Satisfying? Absolutely. We were wrong, he admitted. Logan and I, we let our egos get in the way. We were jealous. Uncle David always lit up when you showed him new designs. We have the degrees, but you built the future. And yet you called me just tech support, I reminded him. I know, he said quietly. It was cruel and stupid. We thought sales and branding were everything, but without the tech. You have nothing, I finished for him. He nodded. The board is in meltdown. Distributors are threatening lawsuits. Robert had a panic attack yesterday and ended up in the ER. I felt a flicker of sympathy, but I buried it. They had 21 years to show me respect. It took 4 days without me to realize my value. What are you proposing? I asked. Come back, he said. Full partnership, equal voting rights, retroactive compensation for your patents. We'll restructure everything, make you chief technology officer. Just save us. Chief Technology Officer? No. I met Timothy's eyes without blinking. I don't want a fancy title that changes nothing. I want to be what I've always been, the core of this company's innovation, but this time I want recognition and compensation. He hesitated. Name your terms. I want 51% ownership, I said. Majority control. Timothy went pale. 51? The board won't approve that? Then let them watch Barrack Dynamics sink back into obscurity, I said, while I launch a company using every innovation and patent you no longer have rights to. You'd destroy Uncle David's legacy over this? Dad's real legacy was teaching me to value myself, I replied. You and Logan trashed it when you made me expendable. I'm offering to rebuild it, but on my terms. He left without agreeing, but I knew they'd return. Without my patents, Barrett Dynamics was a shell. Their supply chains, deals, and projections were built on tech only I could authorize. A week passed, then another, filled with negotiations, boardroom panic, and empty threats. Finally, they gave in. 51% ownership. A board seat. The title of my choosing, Chief Innovation Officer. The signing ceremony was held in the same conference room where they'd fired me. No champagne this time, just legal folders and quiet tension. As I signed the final document, Robert cleared his throat. For what it's worth, he said. We're sorry. We should have valued you. Yes, I replied. You should have. But I had no time for bitterness. I had a company to rebuild. The first thing I did, a full patent audit. Turns out, I wasn't the only one overlooked. Several engineers had brilliant ideas that were shelved because they didn't fit the branding strategy. Within 6 months, we launched 3 new product lines based on those ignored innovations. And my smart home hub, the one I'd built quietly in my garage, became our flagship product. Timothy and Logan, to their credit, adapted. They focused on sales and branding, but this time they listened. They asked questions. They learned what they'd once dismissed as technical clutter. And Barrett Dynamics thrived. We grew from a regional supplier to a national name, then international. The patents I'd protected became the foundation of a modern tech empire, but my real victory was cultural. Engineers spoke up without fear. Ideas weren't shot down for being too technical. Everyone knew their work mattered. My name now sat at the top of the letterhead. The Barrett Dynamics Innovation Company. One day, at a tech conference in San Francisco, Timothy introduced me. This, he said proudly, is Elise Barrett, the genius behind everything we make. They'd once called me just tech support, a background player, replaceable. They toasted my departure, confident they'd removed the weakest link. But they had severed the heart of their own company. Because in a tech firm, the one who holds the patents holds the power. And the quiet one in the corner, the one taking notes and solving problems, that's the person who can bring an empire to its knees. Not out of revenge, out of resilience. When you ignore someone's value for decades, dismiss their voice, downplay their contributions, you write your own downfall. They thought they were kings, but every king needs a kingdom, and I had been the one building it all along. Now, I sit at the head of the same table they once tried to push me from. Behind me, the wall is lined with framed patents, each one a quiet triumph. That champagne cork they popped? It wasn't my funeral they were celebrating. It was their own. To everyone watching this, if my story struck a chord, leave a comment below. Not for me, but for every person who's ever been underestimated, overlooked, or silenced. Your words matter. Remind the world that quiet strength is still strength. Stand with me. Because no one should have to fight alone for what they've earned.